What's going on, everybody? It's Anthony from Truth Will Set You Free, blunt force discussion, all the different things. This is an episode of Truth Tuesdays. We are starting a little bit late tonight. We want to make sure we had a special guest. We're talking about, we're going to be very serious tonight. This is not about necessarily current news, what's happening today. We might mention, Jim Jordan at the end of the show, whatever. But right now, as I have decided to dive into the topic of Israel and Palestine from a level that is difficult for somebody that has a lot of cognitive dissonance, who is half Jewish, who is Christian, heritage, all points to being pro-Israel. There's a lot to this, and it's very difficult to start piecing things together. I've had conversations today with those that are very pro-Israel. I've had conversations with those that have family in Palestine, are anti-Hamas, pro-Palestine, very anti-Israel. There's a lot of different aspects. The guest we've got today from Patriot Gear, if you follow Ian's got a great social media, always has what people would consider conspiracy theories, when in all reality, they are rooted in complete and utter research and very interesting across the board. One of a super great page to follow, so make sure you do that. But there's another side to this. It's not necessarily pro-Palestine, and it's not necessarily pro-Israel. It is globalist elites, a question of Zionism. And at the end of the day, why does everybody want us to be paying attention to this? So there's more factors potentially at play. Before we kick the tires and light the fires with our little countdown, Ian, can you introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, guys. So I'm Ian Wendt. I'm the CEO and founder of Official Patriot Gear. My Instagram, most people know me from my Instagram. It's just iWendtster, IWENDTSTER. And I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a business owner, and I'm just somebody that got sick and tired of seeing what I was seeing back in 2020 and decided to let my closet conspiracy theorists come out, what people would consider anyway. And I decided to get loud about some things, and one thing led to another. And, now I have a pretty awesome community that I've been able to build, and a business that came from that, as far as, we're not just a political merch company. We are a lifestyle brand, and, it represents, when people wear our gear, it represents something different than most people would think. It's not, I got sick and tired of seeing the word patriot get dragged through the mud by one side and, quite frankly, hijacked on the other. And it's like, to be a patriot doesn't mean that you're one side or the other. It doesn't mean you're one race or another. It doesn't mean you're one religion or another. It literally is and it's also, quite frankly, it's also not American. People think that patriotism is an American thing. It's not. I mean, if we want to talk about how we actually got out of our pandemic, like if we really, really want to be honest about it, the Canadian convoy was probably the biggest hammer that hit that nail. And yet 100%. Nobody wants to talk about that. But those were patriots, and those are Canadian patriots. So our message is that it's patriotism's not partisan. It's not exclusive. You love the country, you love the people, you love, you want it to grow and thrive and be free. Doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter what walk of life you're on, you are a patriot. And we need to get back to that, because that kind of unity, or that kind of understanding, creates real unity, like we saw after 9/11, right? Like we're about to see, I believe, as this stuff goes off, unfortunately. But we need to get back to that, because it's what actually can give us a fighting chance as a society, I believe. And so, every single time we put a t-shirt or something on somebody's body that has our logo on it, or that has our designs, or is part of our brand, that's what they're representing. So yeah, it's been really cool to be a part of that, and we've been really blessed, and it's become more of a movement than anything, which has been incredible.
That's awesome. And and some of the best conversations that I see, I mean, how I respect Bobby Sauce. I respect you. Some of the times we've pinged each other, we've gone back and forth, we've agreed, we've disagreed, but sure. From a perspective of having stance of neutrality and also logic and intelligence, there really is not a lot of better conversations you will find on social media. So let's go and you ready to get the party started?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. That's right. This is episode 155 of Truth Will Set You Free. We got Casey and me, and of course, our special guest, Ian Wendt. This show is all about Israel and Palestine. We're just going to have a very basic conversation because I do think this is probably one of the more complex topics that I have looked at and tried to, with the idea of truth, get to the bottom of once I started viewing it from all sides, not just one side, not just the other, but even the overriding side behind it. Casey, I didn't say hello to you to start. Casey, what's going on in your world?
Yeah, you just always ignore me. You're a jerk.
Fact. People from Utah, I don't trust them. Idaho, different
Hey,
story.
Idaho is just as equal as Utah is.
But they're above you.
You wish.
All right, Ian. So you pinged me the other day. I know Carmen is watching this as well. As I took a very pro-Israel stance, I noticed that you hit me up a little bit and were like, hey, do a little bit more digging, look a little bit more into this, look at the whole purpose of this. And I had to, when I see it from you, when I see it from people like Carmen, when I see, Bobby's posts as well, I'm using the same three as a reference. And then, of course, you've got the people that you typically follow, the David Harrises of the world that are ultra pro-Israel at this point. I saw a whole thing with Yaku Boyens, who I respect greatly, talking at a Dallas Jewish Conservatives event, just pouring out everything for how we must be supporting Israel right now. And it confuses me a little bit because now that I've truly looked into the other side, I start to see some of the issues that have been bestowed upon the Palestinian people. And we've got a show, Rocky and Russo, going on tomorrow night, where I did bring on a Jewish Marine, and there's a different aspect even from that perspective. Ian, what is your overall concept of what's truly going on in the Middle East?
I mean, dude, here's the thing. Like, I don't pretend to have, I don't pretend to understand everything about this conflict and by the way, this is the thing I think people need to realize, but they don't or most people don't, because this isn't what's being touted in the mainstream media. But the fact is, this conflict is not new. This conflict has gone on for centuries. It's one of the oldest and one of the most brutal and one of the worst conflicts of human history. And it's gone on forever. These people have been fighting each other literally since day one. And I mean, it's all been based on religion and based on, birthright and whatever else. But like, this is something that's so complex that nobody can even begin to try and explain. I mean, I bet you the most accredited historians would probably tell you, you can dig and dig and dig and find out X, Y, and Z, and you're still going to be digging, trying to find more. And so for me to try and tell you guys that I have some crazy grasp on this is like, it's just a lie. I don't know. And so even going further than that, when you said this show is about Israel and Palestine, I actually don't think that. I actually think this show is about us, and this show is about every conflict that has gone on and has been manufactured to create the outcome that the elites and that, quite frankly, evil wants. And when I say evil, I mean whatever you want to believe. If you're Christian, you believe in the Satan, you believe in the adversary. If you're not Christian, you believe in just evil, negative energy, then whatever. But the fact is, we are in a battle of good and evil. And evil does not have any care for human life, regardless of what side it's on. It doesn't. The number one goal for evil is to take away the ability for human mankind to make a choice to follow light. And the only way you can do that is by subjugating them to evil, to all of the things that go against what we as humans thrive with, right? Like, slavery is rampant nowadays. And I'm not talking about physical slavery. I'm talking about mental and emotional slavery. And that is due to the fact that a small group of people, I believe, who are truly influenced by real evil are using their power and their authority and their money to exact control over society, because that's all you can do. I mean, I think if you follow me, you've heard this before, but I always talk about how, let's just talk about in business, in life, right? When you have somebody who's very successful and they've climbed a ladder, right? They've climbed the rungs on the ladder. Once they get to one rung, they're not going to go down. They're only going to keep going up, right? Really successful minded people, they're not going to ever try to go down. They're never going to say, well, maybe I could have less success. They're always going to be trying to get more. Now, you couple that with people who have all the money and all the power in the world, and on top of that, don't have any regard for human life or decency or good in general, there's only one thing left that you can do to really level up or to go up that ladder, right? And that's control, right? Money, power, and control. Those are the things that drive people. And so what am I getting at? What I'm getting at is I believe that this conflict, like most of the other conflicts that we've experienced close to elections or right around the time where we went to war, are largely manufactured by this evil influence, by these people who are influenced by evil. And it is meant to not only line the pockets of evil people, but to also create a situation where they are able to control the outcome of whether it's an election, whether it's they want to hide crimes and they want to distract people, whether it's they want to control the literal pieces on the chessboard that's how they look at the world, right? And so to be quite frank with you, I don't see this really very different from like what we experienced in 2016 with Blue Lives Matter versus Black Lives Matter, or 2020 with George Floyd and the crazy race war that they manufactured, right? The only difference is that it's happening in another part of the country. And the reason why I believe it is because I think, as much as we talk about how lost society may be in a lot of ways, I think people are getting smarter. I think our society in general is getting smarter and is catching on to these antics. And people are starting to realize, you know what? We don't actually hate each other. And the things that they're shoving down our throats from the mainstream media and everything, it's bullcrap. And we can see right through it. And I think that they attempted to do another George Floyd in this country, and I think it failed. And I think when it failed, they said, okay, so we got to do something else. And there's two topics that if you look back on the major conflicts in the world, if you look back on the biggest, like the reasons we've gone to war, if you look at the reasons why elections have been, influenced or whatever, there's really two main topics with that. And it's race and religion, or race or religion. And the reason why is because those are the topics that create the most emotional reaction. Those are the topics where you can literally guarantee that there's going to be a division, where people are going to draw a line, even if they don't know what line they're drawing. We as humans want to be tribal. We choose to be tribal. So one of the main reasons why I don't subscribe to even the two-party system in the country, right? Everybody thinks I'm a conservative. I'm not. I am very much more of like a freaking independent constitutionalist. I think the parties are jacked. I think it's one of the biggest reasons we have the issues we do, because people want to be tribal. They want to latch on to something that gives them purpose, even if it doesn't make sense, or even if there's things where it's like, oh, I don't really like that, but oh, well, it's my side, so I'm going to go with it. Right?
Ian, what was the other, when you said there was another George Floyd that they tried to push on us, what were you talking about?
I mean, I think there's been several. They've
just been trying to find another racial
situation.
Okay,
I think there's been several of those instances where they've tried, like whether it was a mass shooting or whether it was this, or I mean, how many mass shootings did we have in a space of like 4 weeks at one point? Do you guys remember that? It was like, everybody's forgotten about it, but it was like a few weeks ago or a month ago or whatever, where it felt like there was a mass shooting like every 3 days. And most of the time, what did the news articles say?
Right.
Mass shooting.
They were largely driving the idea that it was a race-related or religion-related issue. Right. When I say religion-related issue, right, that is gender. Matt just said that's gender. That's that's religion, right? People fight over gender because of their religious beliefs.
With the doctrine. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the same thing. This is another reason why a lot of the time I have a hard time with the two-party system, is because I'm Christian, but at the end of the day, you know, as long as you're not shoving it down my kids' throats, and as long as you're not trying to indoctrinate my kids and actually like participating in an evil practice, I don't care if you want to consider yourself a cheetah on Tuesday. I don't care if you want, like, I don't care what your gender is. If I want you to respect my freedom to carry a gun, I damn well better be willing to respect your freedom that you want to be whatever you want to be.
Kitty cat.
That's the beauty of America. That's freedom.
Right.
So when we're talking about gender, someone said throw gender in the mix. That is religion. And people need to realize that, because that's the reason why people don't understand how easy it is for these people to divide us. They're using what you consider your absolute, right? What is your absolute? Many people's absolute is that there is no race problem, that we are very much in line with each other, that we love each other, that the majority of people don't hate each other. That's an absolute for most people, right? The other absolute is religion. This is how it's supposed to be because this is what I believe. When you have those two things and they're threatened, what happens? It explodes. And you have each side now fighting over the same thing, which these people understand that. So you take a conflict like Palestine and Israel, okay? And you put it in a situation where it looks like there's one bad guy and one good guy. And the whole thing revolves around a religious conflict that has gone on for centuries. So most of these people in this country right now that are freaking out about one side or the other, we didn't even know they existed until right now. They didn't come out until someone triggered this emotional response, right?
Right.
And now all of a sudden it's out and it's like the thing, right? It's all of a sudden the issue that everyone wants to focus on. I call it overnight activism. Overnight selective activism, right? They're so good at making people latch onto this. And the reason why people latch onto it is because it is deeply rooted in their core beliefs. Okay, so I made a post the other day that said that they use our humanity against us because they have none themselves. That's the reality. Because guess what? Most people don't think it's okay to gun down an entire group of innocent civilians at a rave. That's like, duh, right? Most people don't think it's okay to kill innocent people, period. And it's like, well, yeah, that's a given, right? But
as Americans, Ian, we've done that in the past. I mean, Hiroshima, there's always collateral damage in warfare, which is again what I believe is happening inside of Gaza right now from the Israelis doing what they're doing. And I think that there's some questions behind that. But like
did you just compare a nuclear bomb to missiles?
4,000 of them in a 2-day span, and now 8 days worth. I mean, I have people.
So you want to blow your mind? Go research the things that happened that led up to Hiroshima. Go look at the socio-political landscape that existed in this country before we bombed Hiroshima. Go look at the propaganda that was being pushed. We didn't have social media. We had flyers, we had posters, we had newspapers. Go look at the stuff that was being pushed in this country and around the world before we bombed Hiroshima, before we justified the ability to drop a bomb that would literally destroy that entire region and countless lives.
Right. Well, and possibly wipe an island off the map. We had no idea what that was going to do until it was done.
And once again, this is, if you look back at history and you look at the different things that happened before these wars and before these major conflicts, 9 times out of 10, it's something that comes up that no one knew about, no one cared about, and all of a sudden, overnight, everybody's freaking out about, and everybody's scared. Because again, one of the biggest tools they use is the fear, right? Fear. It's the constant fear-mongering of, like, how many times in the last 2 weeks have you seen that there are going to be Hamas terrorists in the United States?
Right.
It's all that goes through the media, dude, and everyone pushes it, and they know that that's going to happen. Now, is that a reality? Maybe. It might be. I mean, there's a very real possibility that there will be a major terrorist attack just like 9/11. I think it will be soon rather than later. And I think in a lot of ways it'll be another situation where it's very manufactured, because the fact is these things happen to create control. These things happen to manufacture and manipulate the outcome that they want, which is war. These people not only want war, they need war. You can't launder money. You can't exact control. You can't change the political climate, and you cannot gain as much power without bringing the country to war, which is why we constantly keep going to war. People give into it.
As a Christian, though, Ian, from this isn't just a racial situation. This does have ties biblically. This is something that is prophesized. This is an issue of, according to the Bible, good versus evil type situation. And what we're seeing.
So explain that to me, though. Is it? And if it is, tell me why you think that. Why do people think that it's a biblical thing? Explain exactly why it's a biblical thing and it's a good versus evil thing.
I think we firmly believe that Jews are chosen by God. We believe
why?
Because it says it. And again, I'm not a person, and this is why some Christians get mad at me. I'm not a person that believes every word of the Bible is accurate when it's been bastardized over the last 2,000 years. But the one thing that seems pretty core across the board, Torah, Bible, etc., is that Israel is the Mecca of Christianity, Judaism, and that is supposed to be the Holy Land specifically for those people. And you've got a different group of people that is in firm belief that their religion is based, not all of the people, 91% of the people don't believe this, but a strong percentage of those people believe as though the world would be better without any Jews or Christians. Gone. I think that's an issue. That's bigger than a race war.
Totally. So now let me ask you a question. Let me pose this question that I think will make people think, right? Israel. Okay. When the Bible talks about Israel, how does it speak about Israel? What is the exact terminology that's used? What's the exact wording that's used? Because guess what? So much of the Bible, because this is how Jesus Christ taught, is parables. It's examples. It's situations that aren't translated exactly the same, which is why it's been translated so many times, right? So when you say Israel, I think the question that people are not asking is it talking about the place? Is it talking about the people? And if it's talking about the people, is it talking about the people in the past? Because guess what? Those people are not the same, just so you know. The leadership of Israel is not the same Israel from biblical times. The leadership of Israel has just as much blood on their hands as the next person.
It's government-based, which
it's government elite base, and they're definitely part of it.
Well, and that's where it's coming back to. You look at the scenarios that you brought up before, that when it comes to how the war was being pushed and Hamas is going to come across the border, you had conservatives, you had Q people, you had all of the people pushing it saying arm up and get ready. And you push the biblical sense, like you just mentioned, Russo, it's going to trigger another group of people and get them involved. And this is how you're going to complete the circle and get, no matter who you are, involved in this and emotionally driven to be divided over this whole scenario.
Sure. And so the last thing I would add to the whole Israel idea is this. If it's not talking, let's just say it's not talking about the place, and let's say it's not talking necessarily about those people. What if it's talking about the children of Israel? Because the children of Israel are just followers of Christ. We are all children of Israel. So when the Bible talks about how the world is going to turn against Israel in the end days, because I'm well versed in the Bible, guys, like I'm not just spewing this from nowhere. And I'm saying guys as in like the audience, right? The truth is, it talks about how the world, the nations will turn against Israel in the end days, right? Something like that. It's something, I don't know the exact wording, but it's something to that effect. Guess what? You're going to tell me that the world as a whole, society as a whole, is not turning against believers of Christ? If you're going to tell me that, I'm going to tell you you're dead wrong. That's happening right now. The world, or society as a whole in general, is turning away from God. Good has become bad and bad has become good. And when that happens, just like the Bible prophesies, the world is turning against the children of Israel, which, by the way, is us. It's anybody who believes in Jesus Christ. It's Christ's followers, right? The children of God.
So wouldn't you say what's happening right now is actually, it's a big deal then, because you're seeing this turn on Christians that are ultra pro-Israel. You're seeing it on Jews. So this, to me, this is why I do push back that this is a pretty big deal, because we are seeing that revelation into end times, where I cannot believe how many conservatives have become more on the pro-Palestine side. I can't believe how I've seen some of this shift in sentiment where we are. And I believe in the First Amendment. I believe in the ability for the Palestinian chants. I believe the protests, and I also believe in the ability for me to say go F themselves. But at the same time, this is a pretty big deal, because like you just paraphrase exactly why I think this is something worth paying attention to.
I think there's something else that's to this that most people don't want to talk about, because when it's talked about, you got to skirt around this easily, but or with ease. Okay. Think about it this way, okay? Where we go wrong as a society is when we try to label an entire group of people as something. That's like 9 times out of 10, we go the wrong direction when we try to label an entire group as something, or we try to demonize an entire group because of a small faction, okay? Now, that being said, when you talk about Jews, when you talk about the Jewish people, okay, it is absolutely asinine to believe that all Jews are evil, that all Jews are this or that or whatever, and a lot of the anti-Semitic things that I hear now. Like it's stupid, it's crazy, and it's very manufactured by our enemies, I believe. And we'll get into that. It's that you're talking about bot farms. Literally, Blue Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter back in 2016. Most people don't know this, but the reason why they met up physically is because Russia used bot farms to turn these people against themselves, or to turn them against each other on social media. And then from all of that hate that generated on social media, they actually met up physically and fought each other. And that was when Russia realized we can actually influence this entire country. Right. So it's another thing, but I believe a lot of this is coming from our adversaries. They're very smart. They're playing the long game, especially China. But that being said, when you talk about Jews in general, okay, there is something to be said about the fact that there may be, and there are a lot of signs that point to the fact that there is a small faction of that group that all of a sudden is somehow very, very wealthy. They're not oppressed in any way, shape, or form. They seem to control a whole lot of things around them. And a lot of them have a lot of ties to people who have been found in some pretty bad places, like Epstein, right? And there's something to be said about that. There's something to be said about the fact that the ringleaders, the people pulling the strings, just may be part of that faction. And I think you're seeing people that are starting to realize that. But here's the thing. What's so interesting to me is what happens the minute that you say something like that?
You're deemed. I mean,
it's like the black mark.
Right. Yeah. It's the scarlet letter of truth, I guess.
No one asks why. Why is it that I can go around and I can say that all Irish people are this, or all these people are that, or all these people are that, but there's really two types of people that you cannot say that about. Otherwise, you are done. 3. Especially if you have some kind of position of power.
I would say, I'm assuming Jewish, gay, and black. I'm going for a third one.
I wouldn't even say that gay has as much power as black. I would say it's black and Jewish.
Okay.
Why is that? Nobody asks that question, but why is that? Like, you have to be willing to ask that question. And by the way, I am very, very much not racist, and I am very much not anti-Semitic. I'm just asking a question that I think a lot of people skirt over because they're afraid, and there's a reason for that. And so now when you look at this conflict, let's just look at the facts. Let's just look at what has come out, okay? The Iron Dome and Mossad, it's literally the most advanced and most informed intelligence agency and system on planet Earth. There's a reason it's called the Iron Dome. And you're telling me that a bunch of dudes on paragliders got through it, and guys on motorcycles, I think they're actually like motorized scooters,
like
got
mopeds,
through it, and were able to murder hundreds of civilians and take people captive. And that after the fact, it was an immediate reaction from the entire world that all of a sudden now we're going to go to war with these people, and that we're going to and it gave them the green light to carpet bomb the entire region. And not only carpet bomb them, but now they want to launch a ground offensive and literally kill everything and anything in its path. And you're telling me that that's all normal?
Yeah, the end game on it, I see what you're getting at, but I do want to play devil's advocate on the actual attack. So, and I think I might have messaged you this in terms of what the Iron Dome is, what their intelligence is. It is something that is which I call digital. It is modern age protection against warfare, missiles, gunfire, all that stuff. The way that it was explained, and again, I don't know what the truth is, but the way that it was explained is this is a very analog, rudimentary way of attacking. They got close to the border. They built their tunnels, which we all know that they have underneath Gaza all over the place. And they utilized that, and they infiltrated from a perspective of a ground game and these random paragliders, these random, completely rudimentary things, which, again, the issue then that I question isn't about the fact that it wasn't protected against. It's the level of Israeli intelligence. So to me, this is the issue. Somehow Israel had to know that this was happening. So is it Benjamin Netanyahu, or is it somebody there that has a vested interest with the Lockheed Martins, with the American government? That's where I believe there's an issue. I don't believe overwhelmingly that this is a Benjamin Netanyahu or there was
no. What I'm saying is and again, this is where I said that I'm not going to try and pretend I'm an expert in this whole conflict. what I'm going to tell you is that from the outside and from everything I know based on history and what's happened in our country in the past, I believe that what happened was the resources and the support for Ukraine started to dwindle. It actually started to disappear. I don't know if people were really paying attention to this, but most people were kind of fed up. We were to the point where most people were saying, why the hell are we sending this much money? No one knows what's going on. This doesn't make any sense. Why is this dude showing up in celebrity in Hollywood? Like, this is ridiculous. That was the large majority of the population. It wasn't just some people. It was like, if you went on threads of some of these celebrities that were touting the Ukraine thing, it wasn't just conservatives and Republicans that were blowing them up. It was everyone. And everyone was like, I'm so sick and tired of this. I'm tired of hearing about this. What about America? The narrative was starting to shift. And if you believe what I believe, which is the reason why we got into war with them in the first place was to launder billions of dollars because of our corrupt and compromised administration. The same reason why we allowed a freaking balloon to go over our country, like 100% compromised, right? With all of that happening, they said, oh shit, we need somewhere else. We need something else. We're losing grip on the narrative. The election's 14 months away. Trump's leading by 60%, which, by the way, I am not a Trumper. I think he did a lot of great things. I'll probably vote for him again if he's the one. But at the end of the day, they're seeing the reality of the situation, and that is we are losing our control. We're going down a rung in the ladder. It's not okay. So what do? Let's find another conflict. Where? Well, there's these guys over there that are constantly fighting with each other and doing brutal things to each other at all times. I think I sent you this video, Anthony, but literally, like, in 2022, there were reports coming out of Gaza of Israel, like, abusing kids and all kinds of crazy stuff. It was everywhere. Nobody knew about that. I actually made a post because this was during the time when Ukraine was getting all the support from people and everybody was starting to fly the Ukraine flags. I literally made a post and I was like, where's your Palestinian flag? Right? Because if you're going to be an activist for the Ukrainians, you damn well better be an activist for Palestinians, because right now they're being raped and abused and murdered and no one seems to care. Because they didn't know, because nobody said anything. However, these people did know, right? So they said, okay, here's another conflict that we can stoke the fires with. How do we do it? Well, killing a bunch of innocent civilians is definitely going to do it, right? And why do I believe that that's possible? Because everybody's like, wow, here's where the conspiracy theorists come in. Educate yourself on what Operation Northwoods is, just as one example.
And you can go to your social media. Go to
my social media and watch the highlight Northwoods. It's just one example of a time when our government has blatantly and openly put together a plan to harm innocent American civilians and or military personnel in order to stoke the flame of war and get the country riled up to go to war with Vietnam and Cuba. Okay. That's a reality. It's not fake. It's literally, you can go look at it in the government websites. They can't hide it. It's totally open to the public now, right? So why do I think something like this is possible? Because it's not the first time they've done it, okay? You could get into 9/11. You could get into all kinds of things. But the fact is, there's a reason Julian Assange is in a black hole facing 127 life sentences consecutively, okay? Because the last thing they want is for people to understand that these things are used and manufactured. And so you look at this conflict and you say, okay, take all the facts, everything we've already talked about how it all happened. Now take the fact that Iran, right, is now coming to the aid, or talking about coming to the aid of Palestine, okay? As soon as Iran steps in, just so you guys are aware, as soon as Iran steps in, we're going to step in, which means now we've entered the world war. Okay, because it is a world war, right? Mm-hmm. So now you have two fronts. You have Ukraine, Russia, which we're over there. Technically, we're over there. So we're at war, even though people don't want to call it that. Now we have another front. What do you think comes next? Well, Taiwan. China's waiting very patiently, but you know Taiwan is a domino to fall. That's a 3-front world war. Okay? The only way to make that happen is to get enough people pissed off and activated in order to push the fact that we need to go to war. And by the way, how many of you know what happens if we go to war as a country as far as elections are concerned?
And this was going to be, go ahead, Casey.
It all goes null and void. They don't happen. Some states will try to participate and force it, but most states it will come to, oh, we're not going to do it. We got other things to deal with.
And
Yeah,
Casey
is
and
the
I have
reason.
we've had this conversation where we're like, do we think it'll, because, you know, you've got the Roseanne Barrs of the world. It's like, there's not going to be an election. You've got a lot of people saying there may not be an election in 2024 for whatever reason, whether
I
it's
don't
another
believe there will be.
pandemic or whatever. Ian, this is the one where you sent me the message. You're like, there's probably not going to be an election if this continues on. What a perfect framework for it. So, I mean, speak to that, and then I want to talk about the fact that, you know, what if there really is person-to-person evil? Should we get rid of Hamas at the end of this, or not we? Should somebody get rid of Hamas? Should we
So
leave that be?
let me address that first, though, okay? Because that's important. Let me address that first. Hamas is the scum of the earth, okay? Terrorist organizations are the scum of the earth. And there's no question about that. And that's the thing. What has happened with this whole conflict, and this is what I was trying to explain to you in the DM, Anthony, is that people are latching on to what's already a given because it's being used and weaponized against us. It's basically gotten to a point where if you support Israel, you're anti-terrorism. And if you support Palestine, you're pro-terrorism. And that's not the case. Hamas is not Palestine. Hamas is a terrorist cell within that area, right? Just like all these other ones. So what they've done is they have effectively created a narrative where it's created an in-group and an out-group. And that's what they do. Black and white, Christian and non-Christian, Palestine and Israel, terrorists and non-terrorists, right? Or whatever. So now all of us, it's just like it's like the patriot movement, right? If you're a patriot, you're a domestic terrorist. If you're someone who supports all the woke garbage, then you're a upstanding citizen. They create out groups and in groups, and they use us, you, me, Casey, everyone to push it. And when we latch onto it and we take a stand, this is why I told you there is no side. When we take sides, we give into the out group, in group, and we give them total power over us. Because now you're effectively saying that anybody that supports Palestine is a terrorist, even though that may not be what you're saying. It's what is perceived. And then the opposite. If you support Israel, you're anti-terrorist. And the fact is, everyone is anti-terrorist if they have a freaking soul in their body. Terrorists are not anti-terrorists.
Casey, I tried. Does my mic sound a little bit better now? Is there less echo?
You're not your normal mic.
Really?
It's weird.
I don't know.
You sound fine to me, but I don't know the difference. So
maybe it's Casey. I don't know. I'm just kidding. But all right. So what about the people right now that are literally saying that when I say Hamas is a terrorist organization, they counter back? And I know it's not a side thing. I know we want to avoid that, but they'll counter back and say, yes, but the Israeli government is a terrorist organization as well. That's the argument I'm getting. That's the conversation I'm getting.
Yeah. And you know what? This is the deal. It's the same thing. The Israeli government is not a terrorist organization. People within the government are affecting terror on their citizens, just like ours is. Okay? Governments affect terror on their people. That's how they keep their people controlled. It's a reality nobody wants to face. It's a line no one wants to cross, but it's the freaking truth. These leaders do it. All of them do it. If they have the ability to create a massive sense of control by putting the fear in people, they do it. So it's the same thing, right? When someone says, well, they're a terrorist. No, there are terrorists, but it's not the entire group. It's like I said before, where we go wrong is where we label an entire group of people based on a small percentage. It's the same thing with the mainstream media. What do? They use the 2% to convince everybody else that it's the 98%. And it's not. They use a rave where people are killed innocently to convince you that Palestine is a bloodthirsty country that's trying to kill innocent civilians. They're not. They use Israel carpet bombing Palestine to make it seem like Israel is just as bad. They're not. They're not terrorists. The leaders that are doing it are doing something that is terrorist, they're affecting terror, right? But this is the whole point, is people don't think about the big picture. They just look at what's in front of them, and that's what these people bank on. So what I would say to that person is this: those countries have been doing awful things to each other for centuries, and you only care about it now. Ask yourself why.
What about the people? What about the people that live in Palestine? So one of the conversations that I'm having is with somebody that isn't allowed to speak.
Sure.
And they're based in DC. Their family is all in Palestine. And one of the reasons why the person they were going to give me to speak couldn't speak tonight is there was a part of the carpet bombing, a hospital that was blown up.
Yep, I saw that.
500 people dead, and
Yep.
a minimum of 500 people in Gaza. And again, this is done in the name of revenge. And again, it's collateral damage. I understand that. We're not trying to pit sides. We're trying to say there's a bigger game. But at the same time, there is innocent people that are being involved and hurt on both sides, which to me, if I was Palestinian, this would boil up my level of hate across the board.
And that's what they're banking on. And this is what I've been telling people. They use our humanity against us because they have none. They are banking on the fact that people like you are going to see something like that, and you're going to get pissed, and you're going to get emotional, and you're going to choose a side based on what you're seeing in front of you. And I'm not saying that I'm not trying to justify the loss of life. That is absolutely horrific, and it's terrible. And this is what I mean by they use our humanity against us. Because if I'm only talking about these things, and I'm not only talking about the fact that there are people dying, and I'm not only saying we got to be there for those people dying, all of a sudden now people look at me and say, well, he has no humanity. No, no, no. My humanity is there. It always has been. I don't want innocent people to die just like the next person. I don't want these things to happen to people just like the next person. But a major, major important piece of this is understanding why it's happening, because this is what I have preached from the very beginning. In the battle of good and evil, evil is evil. There is nothing you can do to evil. You literally stomp it out and you do the opposite. In the good, there is black, white, Christian, atheist, Democrat, Republican, Israel, Palestine, Russian, Ukraine, everyone. All of the people that have good intentions are in that group of good. But what is it that continually separates us? Or what is the one thing that we all lack that makes it so that we cannot defeat the evil? It's awareness of who the evil actually is and what the narrative and what the actual agenda really is. And that's why I'm more concerned with helping people see that, because if I can help them see that, all of a sudden now you can have two people that thought they were against each other say, wait a second, we're not each other's enemies. That's the enemy. And that's what 9/11 did to us. Think about it.
Even
it
though
didn't
that
matter
was,
who you stood
that
next
was a
to.
corrupt situation as well.
No, it is absolutely and we all know that. But I'm saying what it did to the people is it united them,
galvanized.
Yeah. And all of a sudden now it didn't matter who you were standing next to. Nothing mattered except for the fact that we have a common enemy and we need to destroy them.
Yeah.
For whatever reason that was bad, and whatever reason that was wrong and manipulated as well, right? And we can go into that another time. But the point is, we need to do a better job of helping people understand that we are not each other's enemies, and that the real enemy is pulling all the strings. And our strings, it's up to us how easy it is to pull those strings. So you look at something like this, and it's like, of course, I feel sadness, and I feel horrific, a sense of horrific tragedy for these things. Like, it's not okay for human beings to be bombed, and for human beings to be gunned down, and for whatever it may be, right? But the fact is, you have to be able to see both sides, and you have to understand that this is a very manufactured thing. And atrocity propaganda, and all these different things that are going on right now, like, that is not a fake thing. It's very real. And the number one goal of this entire thing is to go to war. And the first thing they have to do is they have to create the perfect villain. And if you look throughout history, what our country, what our administration, and what the elites, whoever that is you believe, right? What they are very good at is they are good at finding the perfect villain to hide who the real villains are, which are them.
Right.
And it's vastly above our pay grade. That's the thing. We'll never quite know. Casey, go ahead.
Well, I want to touch on what you just mentioned, because it kind of opened my eyes a little bit, in the sense that I'm looking at 9/11 in a different perspective. And I know all three of us are aligned on 9/11. I know we are. But when I come to 9/11, and if we're going to have that event occur within modern technology, with the internet that we have today and all of the communication we have across the country, I don't think you would have had that unified front of go get the enemy as you have today. Like, you have a very division of people trying to talk about it, all of us and many others in the chat on different sides. I think 9/11 would have had that same stance.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree that social media in a lot of ways has created more division. And I mean, it's gotten to the point where, I mean, think about it. How many people follow an account that has never showed their face that doesn't have any real identity, and all they do is shitpost all day long about the most ridiculous things and tell people that, you know, there's like, I mean, it's crazy, but people have gotten to the point where, again, we are such a tribal people. Like we want to believe that there's something more. We want, and it's like they're using those things against us. And so again, I don't have the answer as far as like what's right or wrong with the conflict. I just don't, because I'm not going to try and jump in on that war. It's been going on forever. What I am going to say though is that no side is innocent. Both sides are doing terrible things, and they're only showing one side of that. And that is why I always say, why are they only showing one side? Why are they not showing both sides? Or why is only one side showing two sides, but one, you know what I mean? Like it's a very concentrated, this is where we stand. And if you don't stand here, then you're out there. And if you're out there, you're the enemy. And that always raises a red flag for me, because that's how it's happened in the past. That's how every single time we go to war, every single time something terrible happens, every single time our country experiences a crazy divide, that's what happens. It's the in-group, out-group attitude that I always push against, because I know their playbook, and that is the number one play.
Could it actually be, though, a collective belief that something is evil and something is not? And the reason I say that, because I didn't feel that way, then I felt the same way as you, and then I had a conversation on the show I did earlier. I'm like, why is it that we're completely okay with what happens to Palestinians in Gaza? It turns out it sounds like it is an open-air prison. So as somebody with family in Israel, the way that it was explained, and I start to go, is there a chance that all this quote-unquote propaganda against what is evil might actually be accurate? Because, and again, I've been speaking to some really good Muslims today, so I'm not going to say this as a fact, but I'm saying the way that he explained it, he goes, look, the reason why they had to make checkpoints, lock things down, make it an open-air prison is because they couldn't decipher who the terrorists were. There was people going into Israel that
That's
were
the truth.
and pro-Hamas,
That's real.
whatever, and they go and they commit jihad and kill people.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. It's real. That's why they created checkpoints. That's why they created walls. That's 100% the truth. But that being said, does that mean that everybody in Palestine are terrorists?
No.
Okay, so does that mean Palestine is evil?
I don't know.
No. The answer is no.
No.
Anthony, the answer is no.
Palestine is a place. So Palestinians, do I think all Palestinians are evil? No, but Palestine is that location because it cannot be controlled because of a myriad of factors, whether it be Hamas as their leadership or whether it be the actual amount of people that are committing these atrocities that are willing to commit jihad. Then if you say, is Palestine inherently evil? If you can't contain something, I think it's tough to say that it's not per se.
And so you think so this is the question you have to ask yourself. You think that if you wipe Palestine off the map, it's going to get rid of Hamas?
No. I think actually.
Do you think it's going to get rid of terrorism?
No, not at all. And that's my other issue is what they're doing. I think is creating more hate. It's creating a powder.
But that's what they want you to think. Do you understand? That's what these people want you to think. They want you to think that if you go along with what we're doing, we are here to help. We are the government. We're here to help. We are here to exterminate these people because they are the threat. Where else have you heard that?
The Holocaust.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Oh, yeah, that too.
Vietnam. Right?
Yeah,
so
it's always our major enemy.
No, the entire region is not evil. There's an evil factor there, but there's evil everywhere. The fact is they've just shined a light where they want to shine the light, and they have everybody looking at it like a deer in the headlights. And you can't see anything else around it. That's all you can see is this. And it's the same exact play they play every single time. And so, again, I don't pretend to have a perfect knowledge of the conflict or what is right or what is wrong. But what I do know is that based on everything I've seen and everything I've heard and our history in general, this conflict is very much a manufactured conflict that popped up in a perfect time to get everybody riled up, to create mass hysteria and chaos, and have another war which will launder billions, create control the socio-political realm, and put these people even more in a position of power.
Mm-hmm.
And innocent people are going to be the collateral damage from this, as always. And quite frankly, our sons and our daughters are also going to be the collateral damage, because we are going to be the ones that put us in a place where we go to war and our sons and daughters pay for it, not us. And guess what? From the beginning, I have been saying, and so many like me have been saying, if you don't stand the hell up, your sons and your daughters are going to pay for your sins, not you.
How do you stand up right now?
Dude, I've been trying to do everything I possibly can. You know what? Someone asked me the other day, they said, hey, what's one thing that you think we could do in this country that would make a difference? Because so many people feel like they can't make a difference, right? I'm sure everybody feels that way. Well, what difference can I actually make? You know what I said to him? I said, fly the damn American flag on your vehicle every single day. Imagine what would happen if 1 out of every 10 people in this country flew an American flag on their vehicle. Not just at your house, on your vehicle, everywhere you go. You drive to a parking lot and it's inundated with American flags. What do you think would happen? Do you think the culture would start to shift? Absolutely. Yeah. I've done my part as far as that goes. I've flown the American flag on my vehicle literally every single day that I could. There's been a couple of days where obviously couldn't because it was raining or whatever, but every single day I could for the last few years. And I've also spoken up and done everything I can to help people unite and help people see past the bullshit that we're going through. That's how I know how to help. I'll be honest with you. I don't want to pick up a gun and go to war. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I don't want to go to war. I want to be a father. I want to be a husband. I want to live my life in peace and have freedom and live the American dream. And that's why I'm so grateful for the people that do pick up a gun and go to war, right? But at the end of the day, I don't want to. And so I'm going to do everything I possibly can to not have to do that. But it's gotten to the point where too many people haven't been able to see that. And they've let it go inch by inch by inch by inch. And guess what? Now you're all going to see what a lot of us have been saying from the very beginning. Your actions have consequences. Your inaction have bigger consequences. And those consequences are not going to fall on you. They're going to fall on your kids. And you one day are probably going to have to say goodbye to your son as he goes to war, wondering if he's going to come back or not, just like past generations. And it's the same damn cycle that we run through every single time, because we as a people cannot do the one thing that would actually change everything, which is unite.
So I have a question for you on those heels, and I know we're going a little bit over, so we'll wrap up quickly. But when we talk about the overall concept of uniting, that's obviously the end goal, especially for people like us. But when you look at what's happening with the fact
that the goal though, Anthony? Is it the goal?
It's the goal for us. I mean, I think that should be the goal. I mean, my question may divert from that a little bit, but the idea that right now there is a lot of people that have become, on both sides, I mentioned it earlier, pro-Palestinian, and that divide. Now we have a divide. If we would have typically been a more united front in America of pro-Israel, including I'm seeing Jewish family they got to be confused because they're ultra Democrats and they're like, what do I do? I don't know. So the fact that as a country we're no longer so pro-Israel, we're seeing this pro-Palestinian, pro-Israel fight in the United States right now, and I think do you think that was part of the plan, or do you think that's just a happy mistake that the evil powers have put together?
Bro.
I mean, it was a rhetorical question, but I mean,
no, I know.
I want you to
2020. Okay. 2020. What happened with our country? What happened in the streets? What happened in cities all across the country simultaneously?
Everything burned.
All of a sudden, what popped up?
BLM.
Yeah. BLM. And you think all of those people were just random citizens taking a side and jumping into the fight? No. There were citizens and there were people that jumped in the fight. But guess what was the majority of the people at first?
Real human bots that were literally put in place to start something.
Yeah. You actually think that many people here in America care about this conflict that much to get out in the streets and picket about it and freak out and yell and scream and try to cause fights? No.
It's the same reason
people don't have a damn clue where Palestine is even on the map. So what in the world makes people think that all of a sudden now our country goes from being pro-Ukraine and flying Ukrainian flags to now it's Israel. Now we're going to fight with each other in the streets about Israel and Palestine, and you're a terrorist and you're not. Give me a freaking break, dude. It's manufactured. It's manufactured outrage.
Do you think any of this could be linked back to, and I've had this conversation, including with my mother, about the fact that I was until Kanye said Hitler wasn't a bad guy or whatever he said. Up until that, I was agreeing a little bit with Kanye with some of the Jewish sentiment, like you brought up earlier with Epstein and with all this stuff that and Hollywood. I'm like, my Jewish family has always said Jews run Hollywood. So I'm like, it is kind of accurate. It is kind of the way things are. I don't think he's far off on this. The controls, the Epsteins, whatever. Now looking back, I feel like I might have been part of the initial programming that has led us to this powder keg of now people can feel that it's okay to be anti-Semitic because of conservatives like me that are saying like, well, there's some issues with the Jews. Was that pre-programming?
I'm going to say this. I don't know. Sometimes you have to say, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
What I do know, and what I will tell you though, is this. It is an interesting thing to consider that atrocity propaganda and all of these things that happen around these times where we start to see a war and a conflict rising, right? All these things that get pushed out into the media. It is a very interesting thing to think about where it's like nowadays we have social media. And so we have the ability to debunk this stuff literally real time. I mean, like most of the time, some of this stuff that comes out, people figure out it's garbage an hour later. And it's like you have a major conservative person post it. And then an hour later, they're like, yeah, that was debunked. It's fake. It was from a video game, right? The Ghost of Kiev, what was the island? What was the island?
Yeah, where they all were like, yeah, we'll take us
was
to
it
our
Skull
death.
Island, or am I just thinking of the movie title?
Yeah.
I don't know.
You're thinking of the movie, but yeah.
My point is, all of this stuff was fake. All of it was manufactured, even to the point where some of this other stuff that came out right after this conflict about the babies and all that kind of stuff, right? It's the exact same thing that happened in 1990 when they had that one chick get up and give a testimony about babies being murdered, which ultimately sent us to war with Saddam Hussein, right? So it is an interesting thing to think about this. Just think about it for a minute. I'm not going to tell you why or give you an answer. I just want you to think about it for a minute, okay? That didn't come out for years afterwards. Like they didn't figure out that girl was a fake orchestrated media stunt to get us into the war for years after the fact, right? Now we know, but it came out years and years after. Now we have information real time where we're able to figure out what stuff is real and what stuff isn't, for the most part, pretty damn quick. Like, oh, that's a video game because this person figured it out, right? Think about how much of this atrocity propaganda and how many of these things have been pushed out into the public when there wasn't social media, whether it was TV, literature, newspaper, posters, whatever it may be. Think about how much of that stuff was pushed out into the public in the past that not only wasn't debunked, still hasn't been debunked, and very well could have been the same gameplay that they have now, because I personally don't think it's changed. I don't think it was just 10 years ago somebody was like, hey, let's do this and rile them up. I think it's been a tactic throughout all of history. And so why do I say that? Well, because if you really look at the facts and the different things that have happened throughout history with all these wars, it is not black and white. There's a lot of gray area. And I think people are starting to realize that. I think people are starting to realize that not only does the government lie to us to get us fat and sick and apathetic and dependent, they lie to us to get us to emotionally react and create the outcome that they want, which is war and conflict.
Yeah. Casey, do you have one really quick final question, and then we'll get out of here?
Two questions are kind of a two-part question. One is, I agree with you on the war, but just a quick answer, and then I'll go into the next one is, do you think war is pushed by one side or the other more when it comes to Republicans or Democrats? Yes.
Oh, I mean, in the past, you would have said it was pushed by conservatives and Republicans, but now you're saying, well, it's being pushed by liberals and Democrats, right?
Okay. Right.
Like it's shifted in a lot of ways, but I think different perspectives of war are pushed by different people. But nowadays, dude, I mean, it's both. Like you have both sides pushing very, very hard to get into a major conflict, and you have to ask yourself why. You just have to. You got to ask yourself why. Why is this happening? Why in the world would anyone want to go to war?
Part 2.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I feel. And the reason why I asked that question is because it also leads into my next one, which made me think a little bit about this scenario that I've been pushing in this whole thing is Israel can handle this situation. They have the means. There's no need for us. America first is what I've been saying. Like, America first. Do you think that is causing even more division by pushing that narrative of saying
Absolutely.
Americans first?
For sure. Because what's happening, and I can answer this one really well, and then I do have to go. But yes, like this is very much so think about it this way, okay? America first, in a lot of ways, has been portrayed as a nationalistic message, okay? What people don't understand is that there's a difference between patriotism and nationalism. I'm constantly called a nationalist, but the fact is I'm not a nationalist. I'm a patriot. The difference between those two is that patriotism is love and adoration for someone's country and its people, period. That's patriotism. Nationalism is love and adoration for people, for someone's country and their people to the detriment of other countries, okay? So what I always say is America first is not America only. And anyone who is pushing the narrative of America only, that's a nationalist. Nationalist is not what we want. Nationalist is a bad thing. Nationalist is where the right can go off. That's where we can go off the rails. That's where we go radical, okay? The America first, all that means is if my family is drowning in a river with a bunch of people, I'm going to dive in and save my family, bring them safely to shore before I ever even think about diving in and saving someone else. But once my family is safe to shore and I've made sure everything's good, I'm absolutely going to dive in and try to save someone else because that's humanity. That's how it works. But you cannot lift somebody up with 2 broken arms. And the thing is, they don't want you to think that. They want again, it's the out group and in group. They immediately want people to perceive someone who says America first as America only. And that is not the case. It never has been. And if anybody is pushing that, whether they're a politician or whatever, and you're following that person, then you are not following the correct message because that's not what America was built on. I got news for you guys. America was built on a whole lot of nations coming together and finding peace and prosperity in a nation that was free. And it has nothing to do with we only care about us. The fact that we've been so powerful is because we've cared about others, right? But where we go off and where we get off the tracks is when we forget about us and we try to take care of everyone else. That's where it doesn't work. That's where it's not sustainable. So America first is the right message. America only is the wrong message. And that's the one that they want people to think is America first.
Great way to end, Ian. Let everybody know again one more time where they can follow you. Great answer on that.
Yeah, my Instagram's iWendtster. It's IWENDTSTER. I only have that main account. It's verified. And then I also have a backup, iWendtster2. And then my company page, The Official Patriot Gear, and my website, obviously, officialpatriotgear.com. So if you guys check that stuff out, and if you grab some gear, that's, this message that I've shared tonight, that's what you're repping. That's what you're walking around as a billboard for.
Hoodie. I totally forgot. I haven't felt good all day. I totally forgot to put it on, but I've got a couple different Patriots.
Oh, dude, all really good stuff. I didn't even think twice about it.
All right, take it easy, Ian. We're gonna wrap up the show. Thank you. I'll message you on the side. Thank you again for your time.
Cool. I appreciate you guys. Thanks, Anthony. Thanks, Casey. See you guys later.
Thanks, man.
Later, brother. All right. So that's the end of the show. Again, we didn't talk about really any of the sponsors, so make sure you check out centuryh2o.com. Use Russo10 for 10% off. I'll have Casey do final words before we completely wrap up. I did a lot of the talking, so I want to make sure Casey gets a little bit more time. Sorry, Casey. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/BeTheChangeUSA. I'm going to strongly suggest before I move on, before everybody leaves, tomorrow watch the Rocky and Russo show when we talk with Eric Konovalov, when we talked to him about he was incredibly well-versed in the Israeli conflict and the history behind it, all the way back biblical to 1948 to current. He's got family that lives in Israel. He firsthand experience, traveled there. It's a really interesting show. Make sure you're watching that. And last but not least, I brought up on the bottom, I'm taking some of the viral defense. I'll see how I feel tomorrow. TheDrArtistShow.com. Use BFD at checkout for 10% off. And last but not least, our gear, AwakeNotWokeStore.com. Use Awake for 15% off if you're not buying Patriot gear from Ian's company. All right, Casey, final words. Wrap us up. Take us home.
Final words. I'm actually going to piggyback a little bit on what Ian was saying, is start being America first, but not American only. I love that phrase. I really love that. Because when it comes to our country, we do need to take care of our own country first, but we also we are a conglomerate of many other nations that formed the United States, and that's rare. And that's one of the reasons why you have the conflict between Hamas and Israel. They just don't get along, and they never have, and they probably never will. And so all I do is I challenge you to see the other side and to have civil conversations with people. Don't block other people just because you have disagree on one topic. Try to see the other side.
100%. And next week, there are some people that are on the Palestinian side. I know Ian doesn't want to talk about sides, but there is some people that hopefully I can get to talk to next week. That, I mean, again, they couldn't speak tonight because of their hospital getting bombed. Their friends, their families. This person has 6 dead family members that lives in DC that they're trapped in Gaza right now. I think there's a lot to this. Again, I am pro-Israel. I take that stance. I agree a lot with what Ian said throughout this episode. I do believe there is something inherently inside of me that wants to take a side. I think that that's just natural. But I don't think one of the agreements that I've had with almost everyone is that we should not be aiding Israel in any way, shape, or form. Let them take care of their own business. I think it's human to take a side, and I think it's based in religion. It's based in who we are. So, yeah, and I'm going to respectfully disagree with this, as I've talked to a lot of Palestinians in the last couple of days and seen a lot of not just video, not just propaganda, but actually talked to some people that are Muslim, that have family there, that are Palestinian by whatever. And what they're going through is very, very difficult. One of the truths, and I didn't mean to add more length to this, but one of the truths is, yes, Israel has said, get out, and Hamas has said, don't get out. At the same token, the people still can get out if they want to get out. Problem is they can't get out because Egypt is blocked. All the different areas are blocked with good reason, because you don't know who's going to be a bomber. So it's very difficult. The innocent people are not to blame. That's the problem. So this is not fully correct. They put Hamas in control in 2007. I'm answering these as they go. They put Hamas in control in 2007. They have not had the ability of getting rid of them. And unfortunately, Hamas has changed a lot over the last. They were never good, but they were put in place by Israel, essentially, by Assad. So this is a very intricate. There is more nuance than what I originally believed. I do take the pro-Israel stance. I have to be very clear, but there is more to this than what meets the eye. And when you see tens of thousands, thousands right now, dead Palestinians that are innocent, it's tough to completely, as a human being, close my eyes to what's happening.
Can we say the globalists put Hamas in control so they can utilize that at their convenient time?
Right. And this the linchpin. That's to what Ian was saying. That's summarized. This is where you actually are pulling. This is where they're pulling the grenade switch. They're able to turn the powder keg on. This is it. And Hamas, just like Osama bin Laden was funded by our government, which is ultra corrupt. We understand that. There's just all I can say is there's more than two sides. It's not just two sides. There is Israel, there is innocent Palestinian people, and there is the terrorists that are Hamas. But it is the most nuanced, difficult issue I've ever had to grasp in all of my years trying to get to the bottom of truth, in my opinion.
One last thing.
Yeah.
So let's correlate this to other events that we know and we have gone through for the last 20 years. 9/11 started, right? What did we point out? Everybody was against the Taliban. Everybody was against all of them. What did Joe Biden do? Just immediately hand over a country back to the Taliban to get even stronger. And what is that going to do?
Well, look at his interview from 5 years before. He literally goes, one thing we can't do is abandon our stuff for the Taliban to have all this stuff. He literally there's an interview back when he was able to complete a sentence where you can hear him literally saying, this is the biggest threat we have. And he ended up doing it a few years later.
It all is just a gameplay that they can pull that cord another 10 years and be like, look, they're evil again. We have to go in. We got to protect our oil.
Israel is not to blame. I agree. The Israeli people are not to blame. I am not going to say the Israeli government is innocent, and Israel is giving word to the citizens. I just answered this. They're doing it region. They can't get out. That's the issue right now. Is they cannot get out of Gaza. There is no safe. That's why they've been negotiating safe passage. The pro-Israel group is trying to negotiate safe passage. It's incredibly difficult because none of the countries want to open their doors because of they don't know when Hamas is trying to get out. They don't know who the bad, just like we say, we don't know who's bad coming across the border. We're at a big risk right now. I think that's a real situation. But they are not, when we say they're giving them warning, if there's no place to go, that warning isn't very valid. Again, I understand the meaning of collateral damage in this very serious situation, but that doesn't make the humanity behind it. It doesn't sit well with me. That's all. I don't think it would be happening, which is why Trump is not in office. The comment was, who thinks it would be happening if Trump was in office? Honestly. All right, Casey, sorry. Take us out. That was me. I didn't mean to get back.
No, I already covered it all, but it's interesting just to plant another seed is look at all the chess pieces that are played, and they're usually played 10, 15 years in advance. World Trade Center was bombed in 1993. It didn't have the impact of 2001.
Right.
And so all of these things repeat. And when you start talking about these terrorist groups, they all come back in full circle just later on. And when you look at Afghanistan and our bailout, we just handed them more power and more strength. And so I am looking for, when does that chess piece get pulled?
Yeah.
And I challenge you to do the same thing.
Good night, everybody. God bless. Have a fantastic evening. And the NFL got this one right. Pray for the innocent people that are dying over there, unfortunately. And there's a lot on, yes, both sides. Have a good night. God bless.